I never used to second-guess my husband. For years, I believed in the quiet rhythm of our marriage, the shared silences, the predictable routines, the comfort of knowing exactly what to expect. But lately, something felt off. It started with small things. Missed calls that went unanswered. Late nights at work when his office had already gone dark. The way he glanced at his phone and smiled, a smile that wasn't for me. It wasn't paranoia, not at first. I told myself I was imagining things, that suspicion was the poison of an idle mind. But doubts, once planted, have a way of taking root. And then, there was my son.at18. Daniel had always been open with me, quick to tell me about his day, his frustrations, his dreams. But now, he barely spoke. Conversations were clipped. Eye contact was rare. If he and my husband were in the same room, I could sense an unspoken tension crackling between them, something thick and unsaid. One evening, as I folded laundry in the dim glow of my bedside lamp, I heard them whispering in the hall. Not the casual exchange of a father and son, but something deliberate. Urgent. My name was mentioned, then silenced. I held my breath, straining to catch another word, but before I could move, my bedroom door creaked open. They stood in the doorway, my husband, his expression unreadable, and Daniel, his face pale and tight. For a moment, none of us spoke. "Everything okay?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay steady. My husband hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. Just wanted to check on you." Daniel's gaze flicked to the floor. The tension between them was suffocating. Whatever they weren't saying hovered in the air, thick and unspoken. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones, an instinct as sharp as a blade against my skin. But as I opened my mouth to press further, my husband gave me a smile. "Too practiced, too controlled. Get some rest," he said. Then, just as suddenly as they'd appeared, they were gone. I stared at the empty doorway long after they had disappeared down the hall. My pulse hammered in my ears, my mind racing. Why had Daniel looked so guilty? What weren't they telling me? I should have followed them. I should have demanded the truth, but I didn't. Instead, I sat there, gripping the bedsheet between my fingers, trying to silence the gnawing fear that something was about to shatter, and that when it did, there would be no putting the pieces back together. Sleep did not come easily that night. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind conjured images of my husband's carefully controlled expression, of Daniel's downcast gaze. The whispers in the hallway played on a loop in my head, each syllable a clue I couldn't quite decipher. By morning, the doubt had hardened into something sharper. I needed answers. I started with the obvious, my husband's phone. He never used to guard it so closely, but lately, it was always face down, always tucked away. That morning, while he was in the shower, I reached for it. The screen refused to unlock. A new passcode. A chill crept up my spine. I put the phone down before he returned, forcing a smile when he emerged, a towel draped over his shoulders. If he noticed the tension in my posture, he didn't say. But then again, deception thrives in silence. Daniel left for school without a word. His shoulders were hunched as he slipped out the door, his entire body weighed down by something unseen. My son had never been a liar, but he was hiding something. I could feel it. By midday, I was suffocating under the weight of my own thoughts. I retraced the last few weeks, searching for the moment everything had shifted. Was it the night my husband had come home smelling like a perfume I didn't own? Or the time Daniel had nearly flinched when I touched his arm, as if burdened by a guilt he couldn't voice? I needed proof. That evening, I waited until my husband left for one of his late meetings. Then, I knocked on Daniel's door. "Mom?" His voice was hesitant. I stepped inside, my gaze sweeping the room, a place that once felt warm and familiar but now seemed filled with secrets. I sat on the edge of his bed. "Talk to me." He shifted uncomfortably. "About what?" I met his eyes, searching for the truth in them. "You and your father have been acting differently. There's something going on. And I need to know what it is." For a moment, I thought he might tell me. His mouth parted, his fingers twisting in the fabric of his jeans. But then, just as quickly, he looked away. "You're imagining things," he muttered. The dismissal stung. "Daniel, I have homework." He stood, turning his back to me, a clear signal that the conversation was over. I left his room, but I wasn't deterred. If anything, I was more determined than ever, because secrets have a way of unraveling, and I was going to pull at every thread until the truth came loose. I could no longer ignore the weight pressing against my chest, the creeping certainty that something dark lurked beneath my own roof. My husband's secrecy. Daniel's guilt. The late nights. The whispers. It wasn't just suspicion anymore, it was evidence, scattered in fragments, waiting to be pieced together. I needed to see it for myself. That night, after my husband had retreated to his office and Daniel to his room, I moved quietly through the house. My heart pounded as I approached my husband's study. The door was slightly ajar, a sliver of warm light spilling into the hallway. I heard his voice. At first, I thought he was on the phone. But no, there was no murmur of a response, no pause between his words. He was speaking in hushed, urgent tones, and I recognized the name he spoke. Daniel. I pressed closer, my breath caught in my throat. You don't understand. My husband's voice was low, strained. She can't know. Not now. Not ever. A pause. The sound of a chair creaking. I told you to let me handle it. His voice sharpened. She's already suspicious, and if you say anything, the floor beneath me felt unsteady, as if the foundation of my entire world was crumbling. I needed air. I needed answers. I turned away, moving blindly toward Daniel's room. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open without knocking. He was sitting on his bed, shoulders hunched, staring at the floor. He didn't flinch when he saw me. Maybe he had been expecting this moment. Tell me the truth, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. His jaw clenched. His fingers curled into fists on his lap. Mom, I stepped closer. No more secrets, Daniel. I deserve to know. His breath shuddered out of him. And then, in the quietest voice, he whispered, I didn't want you to find out like this. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. My stomach lurched, a sickening mix of fear and fury rising in my throat. What does that mean? I demanded. Silence. A war raged in his eyes, torn between fear and obligation, and then, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. My husband stood in the doorway, his expression carved from stone. The tension in the room crackled like a live wire. Go to bed, Daniel, he said, his voice dangerously even. Daniel didn't move. Neither did I. My husband exhaled, rubbing his temples. You weren't supposed to know. I stared at him, my pulse deafening in my ears. Know what? And then, finally, the truth shattered through the walls of silence, so sharp and unforgiving it left my world in ruins. The room felt smaller, suffocating, as if the walls themselves had drawn closer to contain the weight of the moment. My husband's face remained unreadable, but his words still echoed, slicing through the silence like a blade. You weren't supposed to know. Daniel's hands clenched at his sides, his whole body tense. His gaze flickered between us, a silent plea in his eyes. But I wasn't looking at my son anymore. My focus was on the man I had trusted, the man who now stood before me as a stranger. What? I said slowly, my voice barely above a whisper. Was I not supposed to know? My husband sighed, the sound heavy with something that could have been regret, or exhaustion. It wasn't meant to happen this way. My patience snapped. Enough riddles. Tell me the truth. Daniel swallowed hard, his fingers digging into his sleeves. Mom, his voice cracked. Daniel. My husband's tone was sharp, edged with warning. My son flinched, and that was all it took. The pieces fell into place, each one cutting deeper than the last. The secrecy, the stolen glances, the tension thick enough to choke on. It wasn't guilt over some minor lie. It wasn't something that could be explained away. It was betrayal, not in the way I had first suspected. No, this was worse. My husband hadn't been unfaithful to me. He had been unfaithful to our family. Daniel, I whispered, my heart pounding, what did he do? Tears welled in his eyes, his jaw trembling. But he couldn't speak. He didn't have to, because I saw it now, the shame in his posture, the weight pressing down on his young shoulders. My son had been carrying a secret so heavy, so devastating, that it had nearly broken him, and my husband, My husband had let him, something inside me shattered, the last fragile thread of trust snapping beneath the force of realization. I turned to the man I had once loved, the father of my child, and for the first time in my life, I saw him for what he truly was. "You're a monster," I breathed, his expression darkened. "Be careful what you say." A threat. Even now, when the truth was clawing its way into the open, he still thought he could control me, but he had already lost. I reached for Daniel's hand, gripping it tightly. "We're leaving." My husband exhaled sharply. "You don't understand." "No," I cut him off. "I do understand. And I will never let you hurt him again." For the first time, Daniel looked at me with something other than fear. Hope, and together, we walked away because some betrayals could never be forgiven, and this was one of them.